Hello, this is Chris with Phoenix Gaming. Today we're going to talk about using tactical objectives. We're going to talk about tactical versus fixed, using cards to create missions, and discarding and drawing new cards, and how you score with tactical objectives. Tactical versus fixed. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on fixed because I've already discussed it in my how to score with Drukari video and a few other videos. So I think the concept is pretty much established. But tactical objectives does create a more dynamic way to play. It's very fun. The missions change throughout the game, and it does create the illusion of variety because you're randomly drawing your missions, and that makes each game feel a little bit more unique. However, it does give you less control over what and how you score. Fixed objectives, you do just pick two secondaries from your secondary cards. They are marked with the symbol you see on the screen there, and they are eligible for fixed if they have that symbol. Fixed objectives will give you more control over how you get your points, and you can tailor lists to fixed objectives, and it's very similar to the structure of 9th edition 40k. If you're using your cards to create a mission, and this is not using the GT rules because the GT rules does have some restrictions on what missions should be used, etc. You will separate your mission cards, your primary mission cards, and your deployment cards into their own deck. Each deck will get shuffled. You'll draw one deployment, one primary mission, and one regular mission card, and that will be your mission for the game. For example, if we drew the Crucible of Battle for our deployment zone, we would use that objective layout that you see on the screen and those deployment zones that you see on the screen. And then if we drew the Purge the Foe mission, this would be our primary mission. Then at the end of each command phase, the player whose turn it is scores 4 victory points if they control one or more objectives, and an extra 4 if they control more than their opponent. And then in the 5th round, the player who went second scores them at the end of the turn instead of in the command phase. And then in every battle round, at the end of the battle round, each player scores victory points if one or more enemy units was destroyed. So this just outlines how you'll play your primary missions. Very simple, very straightforward. Some of them are a little wild. If you've not seen the Deploy Servo Skulls mission, I suggest looking that up. And then extra mission rules. Let's say we draw hidden supplies. Hidden supplies is unless the chosen battlefield mission rule is in effect, before setting up this new objective marker, players must move the objective marker in the center of the battlefield directly towards one of the corners, and then you set up another one directly across from it. So basically what would happen is we would move the objective in the middle of the board towards any battlefield corner, 6 inches, and then basically we would go 12 inches from that objective marker towards the opposite corner and place another objective. And it just adds a second objective marker towards the middle of the battlefield is what Hidden Supplies does. These are very cool. There's a lot of dynamic play here. And because you're randomly drawing your objectives and your deployments and everything else, like I said, it very much gives the illusion of variety. Because you might draw hidden supplies and you might draw Purge the Foe, but you might draw a different deployment zone, and that'll still make it feel like a different game. If you're running fixed missions at the beginning of the game before deployment, simply pick 2 missions with that symbol. They are static, and those are the only 2 secondaries you can score for the rest of the game. If you're running tactical missions, you'll separate the secondary cards, you will shuffle them, and then at the start of your command phase, after you gain command points, you'll draw 2 of those secondary mission cards. You can spend 1 CP to cycle 1, which just means you discard and draw again. And those 2 secondary cards will be your active secondaries that you can score for the turn. If you don't score any points on them, they can remain active. If you do score any points at all, that secondary is scored and discarded. So for example, if you draw Bring It Down and you destroy a single enemy vehicle, then it's scored. It doesn't matter. You killed 1, it's scored. Now, if you score or kill 4, then it's still scored. It doesn't matter. Whatever points you get or what points you get. At the end of your turn, you may also discard 1 secondary and gain a command point, but that does count against your limit of command points gained. In addition to secondaries, you can play with things called gambits, and at the start of the game, you'll remove the Proceed as Planned gambit from the gambit deck, you'll shuffle it, you'll draw 1 out and set it aside, and you don't look at any of them, and then you put Proceed as Planned back into the deck. At the end of battle round 3, both players will look at their gambit cards, and each player will then decide if they want to proceed as planned or if they want to stop scoring their primary objectives and start playing for one of the gambits drawn. If you stop scoring, you'll keep whatever points you've accumulated. If you scored well turn 2 and turn 3, but you don't think you'll be able to score well 4 and 5, it might be worth it to do this gambit. If the gambit succeeds, you score 30 victory points. You will still retain your primaries from turns 2 and 3. And the gambit points simply replace the primary points from 4 and 5. But you cannot score primaries from 4 and 5, so you're just going to play the gambit instead of the primary mission. When you're playing games with 40k, tracking your score, our play group typically uses the Goonhammer Tabletop Battles app. I think most people probably do at this point. It's got a very nice user interface. It has the deployments, mission rule options, and primary options preloaded. You can randomize all of it in the app. And then the secondary options are also available, and you can randomize it in the app. And I'm not, just so you understand, I'm not being paid to promote this. Like, Goonhammer does not pay me, they're not affiliated with me. I just find it to be an incredibly useful tool for playing. And I will put a link to the Google Play Store in the description. If you haven't used it, I suggest checking it out. It is an invaluable tool for just tracking score. And if you're like me and you want to kind of see how you are doing, it also tracks all your stats from your games. So it is worth checking out. Overall, I think the tactical cards are extremely fun. I think the games feel different and fresh and unique, even if they technically aren't. From a competitive standpoint, I will prefer fixed for the most part, just because I feel like I'm in more control over my points and I'm not at the mercy of random card drawing. I don't know that one is any better than the other. I will tell you, I have seen games where people have just drawn the perfect tactical mission every turn, and I've seen games where people just don't score points at all because they don't get cards that they can score. Now, being able to cycle them does help, but it's one of those where, like I said, overall, I think it's a great way to play. I've played both ways, and I'm not opposed to it. And a lot of times, if my opponent is running tactical, I'll just run tactical with them. And it's just one of those kind of situations. But like I said, if I'm going to a tournament, I think I stick with fixed because I can game plan it and score more effectively. Overall, I think the mission setup and secondary play in 10th is much improved over 9th, and I think it's one of the best features so far in the game. Big shout out to my immortals, Captain Too Tall, the real Donnie G, Lord Wellingstone, and Daniel Bodecker. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you. I've been able to get some terrain and a few other things going because of your support, and that helps keep the community growing and growing. So you guys, you guys are as much responsible for helping and generating and creating a community as I am. Thank you. Links on the screen, links in the description. I will say, if you are still watching, I do have a couple of AOS videos I'll be working on. My daughter has decided she wanted to watch Age of Sigmar, or my daughter has decided she wants to play Age of Sigmar, so I've been learning that with her, and it has been a good time. We'll do some videos about that and how to play it, etc. Thanks a lot.